Joining me now is filmmaker and commentator Ami Horowitz. Now, we'll get to the serious discussion about today's peace talks shortly. But first, there's a new sheriff in town and she's called Jeanine, Judge Jeanine, and she ain't messing around. If you're some deranged Karen and think you're going to get away with threatening to kill the president, then Judge Jeanine is coming for you.
Just wanted to let you know here from the United States Attorney's Office in D.C. that an individual by the name of Nathalie Rose Jones is now in custody, charged with 2 federal crimes for knowingly and willfully threatening to take the life of the President of the United States. She did come from New York to Washington, D.C. Her threats were on Facebook and Instagram, and she continued to call the president a terrorist.
Ami, I'm all about the First Amendment, but threats of violence, threatening to kill the president, well, that's not protected speech.
No, it sure isn't. It never has been, unless you are threatening to attack Jews under a Democratic administration. Otherwise, no. Look, how serious can we take her threats? I don't know. She made the first announcement on Facebook. Doesn't sound that serious to me. And she also said she had the ability to get a hold of a bladed object. Does she mean a knife? Yeah, that doesn't seem too hard to get your hands on. So yeah, get a cookie for that. Look, this is example number 456 of why the left loves to use violence, right? I mean, they have a propensity, a lust for violence in general. We've seen it over the years, over and over again, but also in particular, political violence, right? They always like to blame Trump, that he tries to drum up political violence in January 6th. Yeah, but you know what? It's the left. It's the Bernie Sanders supporters who try to shoot up or did shoot up a congressional baseball game, right? It was the left who sent somebody to kill a Supreme Court justice in his home, Brett Kavanaugh's home. And of course, it was the left who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, not once, but twice. There were no assassins that tried to kill Joe Biden. Well, I guess unless you include nature.
Oh, it's too soon for that joke, but it's very funny. And yeah, you're forgetting also, obviously, the Summer of Love, the $2 billion worth of damage and the 24 people who were killed in the BLM riots across the country. That was left-wing violence. We've got Antifa. So, yeah, it has become all too common. Now, let's go to less serious matters. Far-left network MSNBC has been widely mocked today for changing their name. They're now going to be called MS Now, which stands for My Source News Opinion World. But social media users had other names, and they called it Majorly Skewed News Overly Woke, Most Surely No One Watching. They were both popular on X, as well as BS Now instead of MS Now. Ami, why the rebrand? Why are they going down this road?
Yeah, it sounds like Ms. Now, like some kind of feminist version of Mr. Right Now. I don't know. It just sounds very bizarre. The branding just kind of sucks. Look, it reminds me of when the WNBA about 12 years ago decided to change the color of its ball from traditional brown leather to, gag me, oatmeal and orange, thinking that maybe the thought process was, that will help the ball get in the basket more. It didn't. Spoiler alert. It sounds like MSNBC is doing that they hope that they will get better ratings. Rita, I don't think I have to point out to you that your show on YouTube gets many more views than Rachel Maddow's show on YouTube, right? Their most popular show on MSNBC. Not to mention that Fox News has 3 times the audience as MSNBC, both in prime time and throughout the day. So they're trying to grab something to change the dynamics here because they haven't been working in the past. Now, that's the real reason. The official reason is that, well, Comcast, the parent company of NBC Universal, is spinning off its cable assets into a separate entity, public entity called Versant, also a stupid name, because they're trying to gather as much value as they can from a declining asset. That asset is linear television. So, and also they want to make a distinction because MSNBC and NBC News are no longer sharing news gathering and no longer sharing assets. So that's the official reason. What's the real reason? You decide.
Now, earlier today, President Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European allies at the White House to discuss an end to the Russian-Ukrainian war. And Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni praised President Trump for his leadership, noting something has changed.
Is changing, something has changed, thanks to you. Thanks also to the stalling in the battlefield, which was achieved with the bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided to Ukraine.
But the Italian Prime Minister could barely hide her contempt for the German Chancellor. Just watch this, watch her eyes.
And let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this.
Army, these talks came after President Trump's Alaska summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin 3 days ago. How do you see these latest developments?
Yeah, no, Meloni's right. A lot has changed. President Trump has done more in 200 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years. Despite that, you see how the media has been framing this, right? They've been framing this as failure after failure, capitulation to Putin. All the mainstream media has kind of gone after Trump as saying he's not getting the job done, when clearly everyone on the ground who's involved is saying quite the opposite. Look, what Trump did was this is what he does, right? He's a negotiator. He pivoted. So initially, the way he was going into these discussions was he was going to go for a ceasefire, and he was leaning toward that versus security guarantees. Then when he started talking to Putin, he saw an opportunity that Putin seemed to be more open to security guarantees than he was to a ceasefire. And look, that's why he's been going after security guarantees. I get why Ukraine values that very, very highly. And the reason why they do, I get it, is because when they were coming out of the break of the Soviet Union, there was something called the Budapest Memorandum, something that I don't think we've talked about enough. It was the West, the United States and Europe, gave to Ukraine an assurance of national sovereignty. If you give up your nuclear weapons, we will make sure that your borders will stay secure against the predation of Russia. And of course, we just blew that off. And when Russia rolled in, Europeans did nothing, essentially. And under democratic administrations, they did nothing. So I understand why Ukrainians are looking and want that specifically. And that's what Trump is trying to offer them. But at the same time, look, I want to make sure we should be very careful about security guarantees and what they are, because I don't want to have, I'm a huge supporter of NATO. I don't want them in NATO. I'm sorry, huge supporter of Ukraine. I don't want them in NATO and have an Article 5 type protection, because we don't know what Ukraine could be like several years from now. Just to point out a couple things. In 2004, Ukraine was pro-Russian, right? And then in 2010, they switched, became pro-Western. 2014, back to pro-Russian, and now they're pro-Western. So look, we have to be careful because we don't know what Ukraine will be 4, 5, 10 years now. They changed a number of times over the last 25 years. So we need to be careful. But I think that's the way, the path we're going down is the path forward.
Naomi, I want to play you a hot mic moment that many found fascinating.
That's all we ask for, is fairness with the media. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for being so fair.
All the time.
But he loves it. He loves it. For he does it always. I never want to speak with my friends.
She says she never wants to speak to her press army. I can't say I blame her. And there was a lighter moment in today's meeting with President Zelensky and Donald Trump, and President Zelensky's attire was noted.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said to the one that attacked you last time. See, now he said, I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed. You are not.
Maybe yours is much better.
Army, Trump has overseen around half a dozen peace deals this year. Most of them no one has heard much about, really, Azerbaijan and Armenia, the Congo and Rwanda. But this is a war, the Ukrainian-Russian war, that the West, and including Americans, have been deeply invested in from the start. Can you realistically see an end to it?
Yeah, look, first of all, really quick on Trump and Meloni and the press thing. Yeah, Trump has, just to give you a point of reference, Trump did 3 times as many press conferences and interviews as Joe Biden, despite the fact that the media was an appendage, right, to the Democratic propaganda machine, and were against Donald Trump. No, he loves going up to the press. He loves the challenge. He wants to change them. He frankly likes, between you and me, he likes to have the adulation of the press when he can, the mainstream press in particular. Look, when it comes to this particular conflict, you know, it's so funny. You know, you mentioned a couple of conflicts, and I don't want to pass through them without go into more detail, because it's important stuff. I was in Rwanda. I was in Azerbaijan. I saw firsthand the level of the hatred that these two sides had for each other. And for them to come to a peace deal now, after years and years of war and hatred, is nothing to be passed over lightly. Those are significant things.
Oh, no.
Not to mention the Abraham Accords that he put together, right? And the fact that he took 2 even more implacable enemies, the Gulf states and Israel, to come to a peace deal. Yet, did he win Nobel Peace Prize? No, of course not. In fact, one of the Nobel Peace Prize committee members specifically called out Trump and said, I hate his immigration policy, right? When they don't really talk out. No, he has a track record of bringing implacable enemies together to create peace. So do I think peace will come during his 4 years between Putin and Ukraine? Absolutely, I do. And I don't think he'll get an iota of credit for it.
Well, he's also accused of being an isolationist, but he's just anti-war, isn't he, Army? Because he's got involved in these conflicts. Armenia, Azerbaijan, that's been going for decades, and he got involved, and there's a peace deal, and he had the 2 leaders sitting next to him signing a peace deal. So this whole notion that he's just recklessly isolationist isn't accurate, is it?
It's totally false. And by the way, much to the surprise, the isolationists in the Republican Party, who thought that's exactly what he was going to do. No, that's never been. America first does not mean America only. How many times do we have to say this over and over again? And he's the creator of America first. So I'm going to trust his version of how he's going to go about that than I do J.D. Vance or anybody else. OK, no, all that means is that we look to what we need for us. At the same time, peace through strength. When we're stronger, when we're taken care of, we have more leverage with other countries. That's exactly what we've seen him do.
Exactly. You nailed it there, Army. Peace through strength. Army Horowitz, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Always a pleasure.